Hello, beautiful human, and thank you so much for clicking play on today's episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us and for putting us on, whether it's in the background or whether you are sitting and watching this recording. I really appreciate each and every one of you. It has been such a privilege to be able to interview all of the people that I've spoken to in season 5 and 6. There are so many amazing stories to be shared and so much wisdom and insight that all of these artists have had. And so I can't wait for you to hear their stories. Unfortunately, I had a visitor in Jessica's episode that I wasn't even aware of. I had a little squeaky creature that was either a cricket or a frog that was singing outside my studio window. And so throughout this episode, you're going to be hearing that little voice. So I'm here to say, if you think that this is going to be something that is too distracting, you might want to consider skipping this episode. But I loved talking to Jessica. She had so much creative wisdom to share and such a beautiful story of how she used her creativity to overcome really big life-changing events. And so I didn't want to just scrap the episode. I felt that there was so much that people could take from this episode. And so I'm really, really hoping that you might be able to pretend that this was just a little chirpy friend that was hanging out in your studio. But if you are listening to this episode and you have got the urge to grab your shoe and squash whoever it is that's making a noise, I totally understand. And hopefully we'll have you back here again for next week's episode. And if you do feel that you can make it through our chirpy friends' songs and voice, I really appreciate you being here. And I hope that you have a fantastic time hanging out with Jessica. I know I loved chatting to her, and I think you're going to love hearing everything that she has to share with us too. So enjoy the rest of the episode, and I'll see you back here again next week for another one. In today's episode, Jessica and I are going to be talking about using your art as a tool to be able to connect to yourself, to strengthen your intuition, and to be able to have a practice where your art becomes a form of self-care. This is going to be an episode where you are going to definitely be wanting to reach for your journal so that you can also start discovering what your creative voice is saying. So let's get into it.
Gotta get messy and show the world you growing as an artist. And you're free to be yourself. You got a dream, you need to start it. Stick together. Get messy says you're formally invited to a community where you can find people that spark the feel of excitement. Too many art supplies, not enough time. No, it's tough, and so you must find a way to feel some connection. We got a lot of people with the same kind, a great mind. We here for you, a platform so we can hear your views. Time's yours, forget yours. I know you bored of them same rules.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Get Messy podcast episode. Today, we are going to be talking to Jessica Swift, and I can't wait to hear all of the exciting wisdom that she has got to share with us around your creative practice and around just being an artist in general. So thank you so much for saying yes to joining me today, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here with you. Yeah, super honored.
So for those that are listening who maybe don't know who you are, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction?
Sure, yeah. So I am an artist. I do a variety of things. I paint. I am a surface pattern designer and a fabric designer. I am an author. I've written a few books. I'm an online teacher. I am a mom of 2 young kids. I live in Portland, Oregon, in the United States on the West Coast. Yeah, what else can I tell you? I've been doing this for a really long time, almost 2 decades, which is pretty wild. Yeah, and I feel so lucky and blessed and grateful to get to use my creativity every day as my job. So, yeah.
Oh, That's amazing. How do you juggle all the things?
That is a great question. Some days are better than others. It's tricky because I feel like it's all a perspective. Often I feel like nothing is getting the full attention that it deserves or requires, my kids and all of everything that comes along with that. I'm a solo parent, so I'm doing all of that on my own, which, adds another dimension of challenges. And so, yeah, it's a lot to balance, but so there's that perspective, right, of feeling frustrated that nothing can get the attention that I might like to give to it. But then there's this other perspective where sometimes I am able to look at things through a different lens of like, well, of course it makes perfect sense. Like the way that my life is right now, of course it makes sense that, I'm spread a little bit thin. Everything is getting the attention that I can give to it. And it's okay. Like, it's a season. It's the season that I'm in. It won't always be this way. If things change, everything's always changing. So just trying to accept it. Mm-hmm.
That's true, right? You've just got to ride the wave.
Mm-hmm.
It changes again. And everything works out the way it should.
Yes, I firmly believe that. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So do you try and create every day, or are you sort of working in little gaps around other life projects? What does your practice look like?
Again, I go through phases. I feel like when I try to really put myself into like a strict regimen, I immediately want to rebel and then not do that, right? So I try to just follow the flow of where my energy is and what is feeling exciting to me. Right now I'm thinking about the idea of doing a daily project for maybe 100 days, maybe for an entire year. I'm not exactly sure yet, but that's feeling really exciting to me. I go through kind of waves of feeling energized and excited about, deciding on a specific project to work on every day for an extended period of time. And so I don't know what that's going to look like exactly yet, but I know it's brewing. And so I feel like I'm gearing up for a period of really focused creating every day. And then I step back from that sometimes too. And sometimes I am creating in a different way, right? Like if I'm working on creating a new class or working on launching a course that's coming up, that's where a lot of my energy goes. So I might not make art every day in those periods. Also, I just came off of a time when my kids were home for 9 days for a break. So like during those times, I'm not really creating all that much at all because it's very, family focused. So I just try to follow the flow of whatever is happening in my life and wherever my creative energy is taking me or urging me to, kind of step back and rest or what have you. So I don't know if that answers your question at all. It really just depends.
It does. The thing that I'm wondering about is, do you carry any kind of guilt if you maybe can't get to the studio, or have you reached a point where you just sort of okay with just going with the flow, and if it happens today, it happens, and if it doesn't, it's totally okay?
I think I am starting to finally get to the point where I can just accept it and I don't feel as guilty about it. So before I had kids, I worked nonstop, constantly, because I loved it, but also I didn't know how to stop. Like I didn't know how to just give myself a break and let myself pause and stop and really step back and just not be, creatively productive all the time. And so I've carried that forward with me into this, newer version of my life where I'm a mom and I have different, pulls on my energy and my resources. I used to work on the weekends, like I would work often on holidays. And so I feel like just now in the last little while, I have really started embracing my weekends as a weekend, as like, I'm not supposed to be working right now. I can actually just let myself be on the weekend, like other people seem to be able to do with ease. Yeah, so I don't know. It's both. I do feel guilty. Sometimes I wish that I could come up to the studio and work. In times when I just can't, and that doesn't always feel great. But it's both. Guilty.
Yeah. I think it's good to hear that. It's almost reassuring, right? Because a lot of the messaging is you need to do something daily, or you have to be in your studio every day. And so I think, especially, if people are in a season where they're either looking after elderly parents or young children, or, like life happens, right? Yeah. And then there's this sort of tendency to want to have this feeling of, I should have been doing this every day and I haven't done anything for a week or whatever it is. And I've seen people get so discouraged that they almost want to just completely give up on their creative practice, So I think it's important for them to hear that, it's okay. If you don't get to the studio every day, it's okay. And you don't need to feel bad about it. Life happens, and then you can come back to it when you have got a time to do so, or you can sort of ease back into it when things quieten down again. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I think it's important for people to get that messaging.
I think so too, because we can be so strict with ourselves too, that if we're expecting ourselves to show up in the studio, show up to your art practice, whatever that might look like for you every single day, and like it can become kind of an obligation that you might end up not looking forward to, and even dreading and wanting to resist and procrastinating. And like, that's not why we make art. It's not so we can be mean to ourselves and so we can, be this strict, like, school teacher, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's because it feels amazing to make things. And so I think remembering that can kind of ease some of that pressure. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I expecting myself to show up every day? Is it because I want to? I'm excited to show up every day? Or is it because I feel like if I don't, I'm going to be behind, or I'm going to fail, or everyone's going to be more successful than me, or whatever it is? Like, what's actually at the root of it? And I think it's really important to, as often as possible, move from a genuine desire to use your hands and your heart and your mind and your eyes to make something, rather than moving from fear.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Well, I love it. So how do you how do you keep yourself engaged in your creativity, and how do you stay excited about your practice? So you did touch a little bit about, maybe doing a 100-day project or a 365-day project. So what are your strategies for making sure that you can't wait to get back to your studio?
I love that question. I like to create projects for myself that are really open-ended and give me a lot of freedom, but that also have a parameter, like some kind of parameter that makes it easy for me to kind of know what I'm going to be doing when I show up. So, for example, one of my favorite projects, I tried a number of times to do a 30-day project or a 100-day project and gave up after, 7 days and was like, I can't do this. I'm not good at making something every day. Like, I'm just going to disappoint myself, until I realized, what year was it? I think it was 2016. It was when my first baby was just a few months old. And I quickly realized that if I wanted to continue engaging with my creativity and not lose that part of myself, I was really going to have to be intentional about it, because being a new mom, like, it was all consuming. So I set an intention to, the project was, I wanted to create an animal every day. And so that was the parameter, create an animal every day. And within that is a lot of freedom, right? So I knew that some days I might have 5 minutes and it might be a quick sketch. Some days I might have more time, depending on if my son was napping really well, and I might be able to paint. But the goal was just to create an animal somehow every day. And I also knew that my intention was to do it every day, but that I knew there were going to be some days that I just wasn't going to be able to do that. And that was part of the parameter too. I'm going to try to do this every day. And I also know that I'm not going to do it every day. So when I miss a day, inevitably, that doesn't have to mean anything. And I can just go back the next day. So that was really helpful, giving myself that freedom to just know from the beginning, like, I'm not going to do this perfectly. And when I don't do it perfectly, I'm going to let that be okay. And I'm just going to go back and recommit. And so I did that project for an entire year. And I loved showing up every single day. I quickly settled into this kind of format that I loved for the paintings, which surprised me. Like, the project was just full of surprises. And I think the main seed of like what was so important about that project is that it wasn't for a client. It wasn't something that I was going to be trying to sell. It ultimately did turn into some things that I sold and still sell, and has morphed into like a whole thing that I couldn't have imagined. But I was doing it for me, so I could just continue giving time and energy and space to this part of me that was really important, this creative part of me. And so that's what was exciting, is that I was doing this thing that felt really important to me, for no other reason. That was a really long answer, but.
No, I love it. I love it. It's really inspiring because, the way you explain it, it just makes one want to jump into a 30-day, 100-day project.
I mean, it makes me want to do it again.
So it's so good that to hear you explaining it, because it's just like you can feel that passion, I love it. It's delicious.
But forcing yourself into it. Like, I've tried to force myself into things like that where, it's like I'm tricking myself into thinking this is just for me, but really it's like, I hope that it'll turn into this other thing. And that just doesn't ever work for me. It has to start here, like in my intuitive heart that's like just for me. So.
Yeah. And I think, as you were saying earlier, you can feel it brewing, right? So it shows that it's something that's coming from deeper than thinking, oh, it'll be a good idea. This is actually coming from a deeper kind of wisdom that knows that it's time to try again. I think there's definitely a difference in that.
Definitely. I think it's just all about listening to your intuition, right? Rather than listening to all of the other voices that are swirling around that are often just rooted in fear and judgment and comparison to other people. I think tuning in and checking in with what's really going on for yourself is like the magical key.
Absolutely. So I'm just thinking, for people that are new to this idea of listening to their intuition and understanding what their gut feeling is, as opposed to making decisions maybe from a more linear perspective, if I can put it that way, how would you say they can develop that skill of listening to the intuition and tuning into that voice?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many of us often hear that intuitive voice or that urge or that gut feeling or whatever it is, and immediately another voice comes in that's louder and stronger and second guesses that first feeling. And so I think learning how to just pay attention to that first feeling that you have, and then following that is really important. Like, for example, today, before this conversation that we're having right now, I have a whole list of things that I, need to be doing, should be doing. But the intuitive part of me, as I'm like preparing for thinking about this new project that might be brewing, my intuition was saying, clean your space, like tidy things up, get the old stuff out. So I have spent the last little while just tidying up my studio and going through old things and moving things out and getting things ready to donate, and trusting that this is all part of clearing the space for what's next. And it doesn't maybe make the most practical sense given all of the other things that need to happen, but I'm just trusting that following this part of me, like, it's always leading you in the right direction. And I think a good kind of filter that you can use is your intuition will always lead you towards something that's going to feel good and like expansive. And the other voices that are speaking to you often don't lead you. You know, they are leading to maybe feeling constricted or afraid or being unkind to yourself. So like making choices based on what's going to feel good in the moment is a really good way to start listening to your intuition also. And knowing that it might feel uncomfortable, you know, like when you have a list that's a mile long and your intuition is telling you, oh, just tidy up your studio right now. Like it doesn't maybe make the most sense on a practical level, but on a totally different level, that's what's going to help move things forward in the right time, the right timing.
Oh, I love that you are cleaning your space and clearing it out for the preparation of a new project, because I always feel that creates a new energy. You're making space for that energy to come in. It's almost like creating a vacuum, that you're creating space for the new thing to come in, and it can't come in until the space is there. It's like creating a vessel for it. So
Absolutely.
My biggest thing is, like, if you are getting ready for something new, you've got to clear that space.
Yeah, and it can be hard for me too, because I don't like to waste things, right? And I like to be able to use what I have. And so I've got all these old canvases and boards and things that are like, they're just not inspiring. And there's this part of me that's like, oh, you could just paint over those and use them again. But I'll have to sand them first. And like, it just has this kind of energy of it's like a draining energy. Whereas the idea of just donating it, getting it out of here, not having to think about it anymore or do anything else with it, that feels great. So like on the one hand, it's like, do I listen to this part of me that's like, don't waste anything, don't, you know, or do I just let it go and allow the space to come in with ease? Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. Fantastic. So I'm excited to see what the new project is going to be.
Oh gosh.
But while we're on the topic of new things, do you want to maybe tell us about your new class that you're going to be launching?
Yes. So I have a class called Unleashed, which is launching soon, and it's all about basically everything that we've just been talking about, art making and intuition, using art making as a way to strengthen your relationship with yourself, with your inner self, with your creative self, with creativity in general. It's 6 weeks long, and every week we focus on a different, exploring a different medium. So we paint, we draw, we do collage, we do mixed media, and we meet live. The best part is that we meet live twice a week to make art together as a group. And so we make art, we have conversation, we listen to music, we share, we get really vulnerable, we share, epiphanies, aha moments, things that happened, things that are uncomfortable. We share our artwork and talk about it as a group, not from a critique kind of place, but as a celebration of showing up to bring your inner world into the outer world, if that makes sense. It's really profound what happens for people during the 6 weeks as they use art as a tool for exploring themselves, for no other reason than to feel better, right? Like art making is a really powerful way. It's a powerful gift that you can give yourself as a way to feel better. Like you can make art. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need a lot of time necessarily. and it's always available. Like, it's always available to you. So it's a pretty magical time during the course. It starts in mid-February, early mid-February. Yeah, so I'm super excited about it.
Oh, that sounds absolutely amazing, because I think meeting in person and creating together, that is where the magic happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah. I think the busier and more chaotic and more connected our world becomes, while it's so wonderful and amazing in so many ways, it's also really overwhelming. I think for many of us, for me, for sure. So I think it's becoming more and more and more important to have those spaces where we can actually, I mean, we're not live in person, right? We're in a Zoom room. So we're as live as we can be, tuning in from all over the place. But it's really important to have those spaces where we can connect with actual people, to have actual conversations about real things that are going on in our lives. And yeah, I think it's just becoming more and more important and needed, and like people want it more. I think everyone is, we live in kind of a lonely world, as connected as we are. I think people crave real, deep, true connections. So that is at the heart of discourse, and using art as a way to do that.
It's amazing how close one can get over Zoom or whatever it might be, whatever platform you're using.
Yeah.
So especially like over the 6 weeks, by the end of the 6 weeks, you feel so connected to the people that you've been sharing your art and your thoughts and your emotions with. It really is a powerful tool to be able to do something that might not be accessible because of where you live or because of time or whatever, that joining something that has a meeting, even though it is over the internet, the power that is in that is really magical. And I would definitely say well worth it, because it might not be a physical in-person workshop, but it is really, it can be life-changing.
I absolutely agree. And, you know, sometimes like not having it be a physical in-person workshop makes it a lot easier a lot of times. You know, I think the type of people that are often drawn to my Unleashed course are, you know, somewhat introverted and might not even want to be in a room full of strangers that they've never met before. So there's like a nice, it's like a nice step back. There's a bit of safety when you're showing up in a room on a screen with people. So yeah, it can be really nice. And you're just in the comfort of your own home or your own studio or whatever. Not to say that there isn't plenty of magic that happens when you are in person at a retreat or a workshop or whatever, because that's, you know, obviously amazing as well. But yeah, Zoom has allowed for some incredible connections and opportunities for sure.
Absolutely. And I think people are realizing that more and more since, you know, the big thing that happened a few years ago. So yeah, I think especially as you say, some people just don't want to have to go. It can be intimidating to have to go to in-person things. So it's a nice way to be able to grow your art, to grow your connections to others, and to still stay safe and comfortable.
Yeah. I find too that when you make a commitment to a group of people, it helps you commit to yourself more as well, because we can have the best of intentions to show up in our studio, at our painting table or whatever, and make art every day. And I think we all know how easy it can be to find all kinds of other things that are quote unquote more important to do than that, which is crazy, you know, on the one hand, but also it makes sense because it can be scary to show up to a blank page and not know what's going to happen and feel weird about the art that you're making or not like how it's turning out. Like that can feel scary, and it can be very enticing to avoid that, in some ways. But when you have a group of people that are expecting you to show up for them, it can be a really powerful way to show up for yourself too. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of magic that can happen in a group. And when you know that other people are showing up feeling uncomfortable about the unknown of what's going to happen also, it's like, oh, I'm not weird. I'm not alone. So many other people feel this way. So might as well just show up and do it and see what happens.
Yep. I love that. You might as well just show up.
It's better than not showing up.
Yeah. But it is so true. Even though you have the best intentions to maybe create for half an hour every day, or set a reminder in your calendar that this is time for you and your creativity, you inevitably find 1,000 other things to do. Like the dog hasn't been washed for 3 months, but all of a sudden today it has to be washed.
Exactly. So important all of a sudden. Yep. Yes.
We are just like that. It's sad, but it's true. So absolutely, having that commitment, even if it is to complete strangers, it definitely helps you to show up and to just get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the magic is on the other side of just making that first mark, right? It's like the hardest part is the showing up. And then once you're doing it, it's like a relief. Like, okay, I finally got over the hump of this fear that I have. And now all I have to do is, put paint on paper or whatever it is that you're doing. We can turn it into such a big thing, especially if we haven't done it for a while. I mean, this happens to me every time I haven't painted for a while. Or so I sometimes bounce back and forth between painting, and then I'm a pattern designer, so I do a lot of work on my computer. So I go back and forth between digital and paint. And inevitably, every single time I come back to something that I haven't used for a while, I'm like, I suck at this. How can I call myself an artist? Like, what am I thinking? But it's happened enough times now that I know, okay, this is all just part of it. And I just have to get through this like mucky beginning part where I feel rusty, and then I'm going to find my groove and it's all going to be fine. But that can be scary when you show up and you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. That doesn't feel good. So doing it without.
But it happens. It does happen. Yeah. And it's good for other people to hear that too, right? Sometimes as you were saying earlier, like, it's nice to know it's not just me that's a little strange. Everybody experiences the same things.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how do you gather your ideas? Because you have quite a variety of things that you do, right? As you were saying, you've written the books and you've got classes and you paint and do pattern design. And so there's a lot of different facets to your creativity and how you express yourself. So how do you generate ideas or save ideas that you'd like to try out in future projects?
Honestly, it's really just about getting quiet and creating space within myself to listen for what wants to bubble up. And what that often looks like for me is taking myself out on what I call a thinking walk, which I realize is not the best name for it because I'm trying not to think. I'm trying to just let, some other part of me take the lead and be in control. But for better or for worse, I call it a thinking walk. And so my intention is just to go out. And sometimes I'll go out with a specific, like, I need an idea for a fabric collection. And so, my goal is to allow an idea to come to me. Or I need an idea or I need some clarity about something. And so, it's kind of counterintuitive, that I would, leave the studio and get out and just do something entirely different, but it works every single time. So that's really my strategy for finding ideas. I don't even want to say finding ideas, letting ideas flow,
letting ideas find you, right?
Letting ideas find me. Yeah, thinking walks, getting out and moving my body, feeling the fresh air, looking around at my neighborhood or, the forest or wherever I take myself. It honestly works every single time. So.
Oh, that's great. I love that. It's like people that say ideas come to them in the shower. I have not experienced that. But
I have experienced that, yes. Or driving. It sometimes happens when I'm driving in the car. Yeah.
Yeah, I could say driving and walking. Those are the two that I would. Or you know what the other one is I would have. I would call it swimming ideas. So I find that when I'm swimming laps in the pool, so I literally, if I want ideas, I just go and swim laps at the gym. I go and just swim up and down. Yes, exactly. So I do thinking swims.
I love that. Oh, I've never been a lap swimmer, but I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try that. That sounds nice.
It's so good. It is so good. I think what it is it's different to walking because I find it fascinating to see how the sun reflects through the water, through the glass and into the water. And then there's different shapes that are created. And yeah, it's just different to walking. So I find I have different ideas in the water than I do on land.
I love that. It's almost like when you can give your thinking mind something else to focus on. I think about that when I'm out walking, right? And I'm looking at the trees and I'm looking at the sky and I'm looking at people's yards. It's like my mind is occupied thinking about all these things that my eyes are seeing. And this other part of me has more access to just speak to me in a different way. That's what I thought of when you were talking about seeing the shapes in the water. Like your mind is focusing on, ooh, look at that. Look at that. This other part of you has more space to come through.
Right. It's true. It really is true. And it takes that pressure off too, because if you were sitting in the studio in front of a sketchbook or whatever and trying to then get ideas, there's a lot of pressure on a moment like that.
Yeah.
Whereas just saying, you know what, I'm just getting out and I'm just going to go for a walk, you've immediately shifted the perspective and the focus away from this thing of I have to have an idea and when's it going to come.
Yeah, I think just changing your environment is really important in general. Another thing that I do sometimes, like if I need to, maybe not if I need to come up with an idea, but if I need to like map out an idea, I'll often take a notebook and a pen and go sit on my bed. Like no laptop, no anything. So it's just a different environment. I don't know why that works for me, but that's like when I need to do a specific kind of thing, I go to my bed and just sit there and it works. So
I love that.
Another strategy that I use sometimes if I want to get out of my head is when I was a kid, I always used to sit on the floor and color and make art. And so I'll get on the floor and I'll just do it on the floor like I did. And it reminds me like, oh, I don't have to take this so seriously. So.
Oh, I haven't tried the floor.
Yeah, it works.
If I have to write emails or, like do things that I really don't want to do, like spreadsheets or whatever, I will do them in bed. Because for me, it's comforting. It's like my bed is going to help me to be able to just push through.
Yep.
So I'll take it out of my office and I'll go and get under the duvet and I'll sit and do it in bed.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think paying attention to those things, like there's no right or wrong way to do these things, right? Like however we can make it feel the most fun and the least like terrible, the better, right? Like, if I need to write, like when I was writing my books, or if I'm writing an email or, like a newsletter email, my best place to do that is like in the evening after my kids have gone to bed, sitting on the couch with my laptop. I don't know why, but that's where the writing flows, where and when the writing flows most easily. So, I mean, I think just paying attention to your own rhythms, like it's just another way to pay attention to your intuition, right? Like this isn't how everyone does things, but it's the way that I do things and this works. And I don't know why, but it does.
Oh, I love that you sit on the couch though, because it's like that's the time that you're going to have a chat with yourself, or a chat with whoever you're sending the email to, or, if you're writing a book, you are talking to, I'm sure you have someone specific in mind as you're writing, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes so much sense that the couch is where you're going to go and do it. I love that.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's so
cozy.
True. Yeah, it's like the place where you sit and you have like a heart to heart.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right. So that's just, for me, it just feels so right that you would choose a couch to. Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay. I love that we are unpicking these things, because I don't think people think about it very often. And so sometimes you might think, but that's just a silly idea. But like now, talking to someone about it, you sort of start to see why you would choose to do certain things a certain way.
I think it can help us kind of question the underlying beliefs that we might have about what it means to be an artist also. Like, when you're an artist, that means you're in the studio all day, and it's very serious. And it's, this is obviously not what everybody thinks, but we all have these beliefs that we might not even realize that we have. And when we start to question them, like, well, why do I think that? What if I did do it in this other way? How would that feel? Would that feel better? Does that mean I'm not an artist? What does that mean? And like, in reality, we're all just making this up as we go. Like, all of it's made up. And so really, you can actually just do whatever the heck you want all the time. And if you say you're an artist, then you're an artist, whether you sit on the floor or you stand at your easel, or you whatever, sit on your couch in the evening and draw with a Crayola marker that, is partially dried out because your kids use it too much. It's like, it all counts. Yeah. We just get to do whatever we want, however we want to do it, however it feels good.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. That really is important for people to remember. And the other thing that I was thinking while you were saying that too was, you also get to define what being an artist means. Like, a lot of people feel an artist means you can draw something very realistically, or you have to sell art to call yourself a real artist, or you have to have some kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Recognition from other people as an artist, So it's actually you who gets to define what being an artist means to you and in your life.
Yeah. Like, who are these people who are deciding, this like panel of people who are deciding these things? It doesn't exist, right? There's no panel of people. We all just get to decide and make our own definitions, just like you said. I love that. There's so much freedom and power in that. Like, I think about my kids who, they call themselves artists. And what we say is, like, if your hands are covered in paint or markers or whatever, they're like, look, this means I'm an artist. I'm like, sure does. Yep. That's exactly right.
I love that.
You made something. You're an artist. We're all artists. We just pile all of these other beliefs about ourselves and what that means on top of the fact that, like, the real true fact that we're all born with the ability to make things. So, yeah.
So how did you end up writing books? Do you want to tell us a bit about that journey?
Sure, yeah. So one of my books that came out a few years ago is called Art for Self-Care. And again, it's about everything that we've been talking about. I've been on this real art and intuition journey for the last number of years. And yeah, so it's just a publisher actually came to me for that one. I have a Skillshare class that's about this topic, and they saw the class and thought it would make a great book and asked me if I would be interested. And so that kind of snowballed and led to that book. And then the other one, I don't want to get too, like, I feel like this conversation has been somewhat uplifting, and I'm about to take it down into a sad spot. But so I wrote a book a few years ago called Radiant Rainbows, which is it's a book full of like blessings, basically. Or I'm not a religious person, but I can't think of a better word than prayers. It's like a book of prayers and wishes and hopes. And that book is rooted in 2018, my husband died while I was pregnant with our second child. So that was, very intense and really difficult. And so that's really when I started using art as a way to heal and make myself feel better. I didn't really know why at the time, but I started painting rainbows, which I'm wondering, I have some in my studio. They're not hanging back there, so I can't point them out right now, but it just made me feel better, right? Like my studio was my favorite place to be because it was a place where I felt safe. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could just make art and feel whatever I needed to feel. And so these rainbows, like it was kind of like the animal project. I just started painting them and making them as a way to stay connected to myself and as a way to check in with what was going on inside of me. And these paintings morphed into this whole world that I couldn't have imagined, and were really the seed of this whole using art as a way to strengthen your relationship with yourself journey that I have been on for the past, it's been over 6 years now. And so the book, Radiant Rainbows, is a book of rainbow artwork paired with blessings, hopes, wishes, prayers, mantras that I wrote for myself and also for anybody who is going through something hard, which is all of us at one time or another, right?
Yes, right. So that feels like the book that you need. You need that book on your shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. So
because life gets hard.
Life gets hard for all of us in one way or another at one time or another. And so like we all know somebody going through something hard probably right now. We might, you might be going through something hard right now. Like that's just the way that life is. So, so both of those books were written out of based on, my own actual practice of using art as a way to heal and make myself feel better. So I know how powerful it is from firsthand experience. And so I'm really inspired to help other people find this tool and use this tool that's available to all of us. You don't even have to be like a good artist. You don't have to know what you're doing at all in order to let art help you work your way through hard stuff and come out on the other side, knowing yourself better and trusting yourself and having having an expanded, deeper relationship with yourself and your life. So it's available to all of us, whether you've ever picked up a paintbrush or a marker or not. So
I've written here that these are all deeply rooted themes for you, right? That what you're talking about and what you're teaching and writing about and what you're creating about and for is really something that's deeply connected to who you are and to what your practice means to you. So it's coming from a much deeper place than just sort of saying that art is for self-care, right? This is, you've actually lived it.
Yeah, it's like this is actually a tool that I have used for years, and I don't use it maybe this way every single day anymore, but for a long time I did. Every single day it was a lifeline for me. It was like, okay, I know I have this space where I can just sit and be and work out what's going on the page, or often it was on my iPad after my little kids went to bed. It was like a critical piece of taking care of myself in a really difficult time. So
yeah, and it became part of your healing too, right? That you use the art to heal you and to heal your path forward almost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really special. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it's not a downer at all.
I mean,
really
it's just
important.
real life, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's just real life.
That's it. That is it. It's real, and that's not everything is rainbows and sunshine.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. Which I think is also interesting that, you know, like when I first started painting rainbows, I was like, rainbows, like, come on, how cliched can this be? But it's just what came out. It's what felt right. It's what felt good. And I've connected with that symbol in such an unexpected way. That like even rainbows are not all sunshine and rainbows. Like rainbows come out of stormy skies a lot of the time.
Yep.
Like rainbows can't exist without the darkness. So, you know, there's a lot of metaphor. There's a lot of metaphor in there.
I agree. Yeah, a lot of beautiful things that you can have connected to rainbows. It's a perfect symbol, I think, to have used.
Classic shape or symbol for a reason, right?
Absolutely. So for someone who is wanting to maybe take their art a bit further, they don't want to have it as a hobby anymore, but they want to maybe take it as part of a career, or you know, even just expand it to maybe having an exhibition or whatever it is. What advice would you give to someone who's wanting to get a little bit more serious about their practice?
Well, I would say that the most important thing is definitely to make sure that the artwork that you're creating is coming from your heart, from yourself, rather than trying to do what somebody else is doing, or make the kind of work that somebody else is doing, or see somebody else's version of success and try to create that same kind of success for yourself. Everybody's path is so wildly different. And I think that the world really needs all of our unique voices and perspectives, and the ways that we uniquely interpret what we're seeing and what we're experiencing in the world. So I really, really believe that there is a place for everyone who is genuinely sharing from their heart to find whatever version of success they want to create for themselves. So I would just say, make a lot of art, put your blinders on to what other people are doing. One of the ways that, like, when I get caught up comparing myself to other artists and other creatives and other people who I admire or envy what they're doing and how they're doing it. And my surefire way back to my own self is to just make a lot of art and look at my own artwork. Turn off all the rest of everything. Don't look at Instagram. Don't get on Pinterest. Like, don't do any of that. Sometimes I'll go look at my own website just to remind myself, like, oh, this is what I do. It sounds so dumb, but this is my work here. This is all I'm allowed to look at on the internet right now, is like my own work, and look around my own studio, and just make art from that place, trying to really not pay attention to anything else that's going on. Yeah, I guess that would be my advice. Just make a lot of art from a genuine place, and then get it out into the world in whatever ways that you can. Put it on the internet. Contact local coffee shops to see if you can hang your paintings. Like, there are, places like that are often, they have things rotating through, and they might be looking for exactly what you have to offer. Just go out in the world and keep your eyes open for opportunities, because they are there. Like, if you're looking through that lens, like, what opportunities are there for me in the world today? You will find them. if you're somebody who wants to start maybe licensing your artwork with, companies who make products, go out looking in your favorite stores, pick up things that you love that you would buy and see who makes them, and go do your research on the internet to see if you can find submission information for those companies. Make Google your best friend, right? Like, just really get curious about what opportunities exist and how you might be able to insert yourself into those opportunities.
That is really good advice. And I love the idea of you're only allowed to look at your own work.
Yeah.
Like, you're on a ban, you're on a, I don't want to say a social media ban, but like looking at other people's work ban.
Yeah. It's not allowed. Not forever, but just, for a little while until you kind of get your bearings again. Because I can get absolutely lost and frozen, right? Like, when I've got all these other things swirling around in my mind, like, oh, I should be doing things how this person is doing it. And, oh, that person's making work that's so much better than mine. It's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do in those moments because there's just too much input and my mind gets really loud with self-criticism. And so my main aim in those, when I find myself having gone down, that path that's not helpful for me at all, is to get back to myself however I can. And that usually means tuning the rest of it out.
Yeah. I wrote down here, it's a ban until you're healthy again.
Yes. Exactly. Which might mean forever,
Yeah. If that's what it takes.
It's, I don't know. The internet is an amazing place, and it can be a dangerous place for our mental well-being, I think. So
yeah, that's true. It really is true. And you could be having a really good, you could be in a good headspace and something small could send you in a spiral because,
Definitely.
So it's dangerous too. It's a good place, but you have to sort of be careful about what it is that you are allowing yourself to think and consume. And Well, thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you for talking to us today and for sharing all of your insights and your heart with us. It has been such a beautiful chat.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. I really enjoyed it.